All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Talk. I hope you guys are all good and well in these tough times we find ourselves in. But today we're joined by a special
Mm-hmm.
guest, Lois Ward, who's the founder of Ascent magazine.
Hiya. I
So, would you like
am.
to introduce yourself?
Give a little background to
Yeah.
yourself.
So I am Lois. I am the founder of Ascent magazine and Styling by Lois. So there's two separate platforms that I have. So Ascent magazine is a publication that I created to kind of give the unheard in today's society a voice in terms of their career and their journeys to success, whether that be fitness instructors, fashion designers, artists, musicians, chefs, whatever it may be. And it's to just make sure that everyone in society who doesn't necessarily have the easiest start in life is given, a great opportunity to talk about what they do and why they do it, and not just highlight the end goal, which is, to be successful and have loads of money, but also to talk about everything they've been through whilst on their journey, if they're still on it, etc.
Yeah.
And Styling by Low is like my virtual styling platform that I've kind of got going at the moment. So that's there to kind of give people some styling advice, inspiration. Nice. I also offer like tailored personal services. But yeah.
Nice.
So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, go on.
And we CultrTalk are official partners of Ascent magazine.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We will be pushing the platform out there for everybody to check them out.
Of course. Lois is a long time friend, so of course we have to
absolutely
support. Long time. So to this one, we want to start off with what everybody knows: elephant in the room, the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
How has everyone been in this pandemic?
I mean, I think this one is one for the history books. Like,
take a deep breath.
2020 is one for the history books.
One for the history books, but one to be forgotten. Like, it's not one that we want to remember. Honestly, so much has changed in terms of how we live our lives, how we interact with people.
Life the way we used to know it has changed completely.
Has completely changed, and in some instances permanently. Even amidst all that's going on now, we can't even protest for things we deeply believe in simply because we have to take into consideration social distancing and other aspects. But yeah, how has it been for you two, and especially Lois? Obviously working on your brand and Ascent magazine as well. How's that been?
It's been a wild one. I think for me it's been a bit hard because everything I've known has closed and has stopped. But in terms of like my mum and a few other family members, they've still been on the front line. So my mum's a phlebotomist, so she's been working every day since the country went into lockdown. She's been there day in, day out, and she is actually falls into the critical category who needs to be shielded. So she was supposed to shield for 12 weeks, but she refused. She went to work and she's just been there every day since, hasn't had a single day off. She did fall ill for a week, but luckily it wasn't COVID. She was tested, she was negative, so luckily she just must have just caught something, unfortunately, but she got better in a few days. But it's been really stressful. I mean, even like at the beginning of the pandemic, I don't even think the way that the news reported it was really reflective of what it was like. Like, she was coming home every day so exhausted. She was saying, like, there was so many different stories that she was coming home with, and just the pressure on her team and just the pressure on the NHS. Like, it was literally the NHS was crumbling under the pressure, and there was no help being sent in, just a clap every Thursday night, and it was just. And
I don't think the people helped the situation either, being that a lot of us weren't quarantining in the first place, which obviously
exactly.
Overall, though, big up to her and thank you so much.
Honestly, thank you.
Honestly,
to her.
Yeah.
I mean, our words don't obviously cut it, but so putting the ground for everybody. So for me, it's been just working at home more, to be honest. Usually I'd be out and about, like going to my apartments and stuff. That's kind of stopped, but it's given me more time to put better systems in place, because where I didn't have time before to be at home to do that, I've been able to like go back and sort them out. The only problem is it's just messed up my sleeping patterns and stuff like that. So,
I think everyone's has gone down the toilet, like, honestly.
Mine's been messed up, so.
Just like you.
And I think it is harder as well, like just in terms of with the magazine and getting the first issue out. Obviously I was quite fortunate that I'd had a lot of physical, like photographic content had already been done. But in terms of like a lot of other stuff, it was a lot harder in that retrospect. But I think at the same time, I was lucky that we had a lot of support from, you know, all of the staff and that, so and at uni, so it was really helpful. But I know a lot of other like uni students have really been struggling because like a lot of my friends, their unis have just basically just fell off the radar. Completely. So, you know, and like, so I know people who are writing their dissertations and were given a 2-week extension with no library. And they just had to do it. So, you know, it's been really difficult.
That puts us perfectly onto like, how has this whole situation affected young people? So we know how obviously other generations are affected, but we are the younger generation, even generations that are younger than us. How is it impacting everybody? Like, what would you say is hurting them most, maybe?
I mean, to me personally, even more so than us, like obviously for me and Lois, like we're still in university, so it's affecting how we get our work done. And for me, honestly, my motivation to do work in the first place, because for me, home's a place of comfort. So then having to push myself to do deadlines is hard enough. But then you talk about kids who this is their summer holiday period. You know, they used to be playing out, you know, actually enjoying themselves this summer, and they're sort of stuck at home with parents, and you know, they don't have much freedom.
I mean,
no, go on.
No, so the struggles I've seen, I'd say, is, so first of all, the whole scenario around, you know, A levels, they're using predicted. That is quite sad. Because I remember
GCSE students as well.
So when I was in school, my predicted were a lot lower than what I actually got. So like if I was told that, oh, what's going to happen now is going to be based off your predicted, I'd be very upset. And then further up the line, it would be the people now coming out of uni. You guys, the job market right now is crazy.
It's all over the place.
As if already it wasn't hard enough. Exactly. Unis have already gotten to the point where it's so oversaturated that I don't think, like, even going to a big name uni, quote unquote, is like, is it really helping that much? Because we're all applying to the same jobs anyway. But now, given that a lot of jobs are furloughing their staff, are they going to be looking to employ graduates who don't have experience?
No, because I've heard a lot of places have like stopped that, put it on shelf, like all their grad schemes and all their internships.
Literally.
What about HSBC?
My HSBC application, basically I got sent an email saying like they're not taking any graduates like this year, and like so many of my friends from UCL as well who had internships placed this year, like all been cancelled. So it's really impactful.
What's mad is we're coming out of uni at the worst possible time, because usually because we're going into a mad recession, we're 100%, because I think to the point now where we're starting to print money as well. That causes inflation, right? So the best time to come out of uni would have been once you pass a recession and you start seeing the upward curve. That's the best time, because that's when businesses start to get moving. So, but we're going into it when it's at its lowest point.
It's going to be
it's going to be really difficult, and I feel like
unemployment's going to be highest.
Oh yeah, and especially under the ruthless government that we've got at the moment, it's just the worst kind of time. I think this is the worst government to have during a health crisis, a government that wants to sell our NHS off and leave us with the most ridiculous excuse of a health service. I mean, the fact that he couldn't even get it together when it came to PPE, like what did we really expect? Like, and I mean, it just annoys me when, you know, people have said that he's done a good job. But Boris Johnson has the blood of nearly 40,000 people on his hands because he has not done this correctly. And you know, even like just in terms of just the people dying, when you look at like jobs and you look at, it took him too long to lock down in the first place, so places were still open, places were still taking all this money, then all of a sudden they had to stop, they had to close, everything just had to stop, and they weren't given any kind of warning, didn't help them prepare, hence why so many people were furloughed, and to the point where the furlough scheme, they already had to look at reducing it in a few months' time because they can't afford to pay all of these millions of members of staff's wages. Like, it's completely impossible.
Yeah.
But in terms of like university, for me, I think I'd always thought about doing a master's, but I kind of never really been 100% on that idea. But I think once this pandemic hit, it really spurred me into doing my master's, because it gave me another year to be in education, and then another year to kind of let everything build back up before I started looking for a job. But it also now gives me 2 degrees, in terms of if one doesn't work out, at least I've got the other one. So it's like, but then it's like I've now got to put myself in more debt because
that's the thing,
of this.
right? Yeah.
So it's really difficult to kind of, in terms for like young people. I know some people who have had a part-time job, have been furloughed and have been let go during their furlough. I know a lot of people who are coming out of uni and are like, I can't find a job. But 6 months ago, there was hundreds of jobs waiting for them. But now they can't find one because they've all been removed because there's no jobs now. So it's really difficult, and it's a really sad thing to see in terms of just what's happened, because I don't think anyone kind of really expected when the news first broke about COVID, and it was just in China and it was just kind of specific to Wuhan.
Nobody
I don't think anyone ever really expected
the gravity or the
what
scale.
this was really going to bring.
No, not at all.
Yeah, like
100%.
No one ever thought that, you know, this was going to cause so many problems for the world, and especially we've got the second highest death rate in the world. Like, you know, that's insane.
I mean, what happened was it went hand in hand, because we already had Brexit going on, and Brexit was causing tensions amongst companies. They were uncertain about the trading laws and whatnot's going to happen in the UK, so they were already cutting down on hiring because some companies were literally picking everything up and just moving to another country, quite literally. So that was already going on, and then obviously the whole COVID situation. So it's just been like a combination of madness that is just like, I when I look at it, it's just sad to see you've put in 3 years of work to come out of university to have no prospects whatsoever.
And nothing. The worst thing is that no one's even getting a graduation.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds so minor in the
no,
scheme,
it's not.
Think about as a uni student, it's something you look forward to.
No, it is.
I've heard people say that, that's a minor thing, but for me, I don't think that's a minor thing. I actually don't, because all the whole experience together, all the hours you put in, all the time you've all the energy you've exhausted, sleepless nights, like that one ceremony day, like when we had it as well, that is like, you build everything up to that day, you just celebrate everybody. I don't think people should undermine graduation, because graduation is mad. Like, wasn't an amazing feeling?
Literally amazing day, and to be doing it online is literally,
even though it's see, luckily my uni has moved ours. It is a year away, but I know a lot of unis have cancelled theirs. Completely. So this class of 2020 just don't get a graduation, which is not fair. But it's like, I just feel like that one day, even though it is just one day, and you do walk over that stage for what, like 4 seconds.
4 seconds, yeah, probably.
It's just, you just feel like it's all paid off, and then you can go out with your friends after, or you go out with your family and you celebrate, and it's just, you just feel like it's finally done. But like, even for me, like, even though I'm walking into another year of education, even if I'd have had that graduation, it would have been like, oh, that's finally over. Now let's walk into the next chapter of education. But it's like, it feels like I'm just jumping into another year of the same course, because like, I've had and like, I've got my final deadline is the 5th. So, but I've already handed in, but there's like a Zoom party for that. But I mean, I know that my tutor's trying, and I really respect it, but I just feel like it's obviously never going to be the same. In terms of like having that feeling, wearing that gown, wearing that cap, getting your scroll, getting your picture, like, it's never going to feel the same. And like, even though we're getting it a year later, a year after you finished, is it going to feel the same? I'll let you know in a year's time.
Exactly.
I'll let you know in a year's time.
You can't take away from that, to be honest, because like, I don't know, because like, especially on a day like when, just to be in front of your family and to say like, look, I've gone through this and I've done it.
It's just to let my family know that I wasn't doing nothing. Like, I was actually doing something this year. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So obviously it's a tough time for everybody. So we're going through it ourselves. But if you could say one line to someone that's watching, that's in our age category, the younger generation, for something encouragement or something, some hope, what would you say to people? It's a tough one, but you guys got this.
Me
what would you say?
included.
Yes, both of you. Like, what would you say to young people right now? How would you say they should go about? Because some students can look at this situation and be like, I've done 3 years of uni, I'm come out, and I'm literally just like, yeah, I got nothing to do no more.
I'd say this. I'd say, like, you realize how much of a bubble university is once you're stuck in it. So now we have the time to be out of that space for a minute. Like, take a step back and reflect on what it is you want to do, because like we actually have the time to think about what we want to do and try and put some energy into that. Like, whether it is you're going out to protest now, whether it is you want to start up a company, like, or found a new styling business like Styling by Low, whatever it may be, just like try and put your energy into something, because I feel like it's the best time to do so before we get a job.
You've got all the time in the world.
Literally. So I think that's something to look forward to.
I really agree. I think, leading on from what Josh said, I would just say that just, never kind of lose sight of what's important to yourself, and don't think that you've wasted 3 years of your life because you haven't. Just because you're not going to get a job straight away, that doesn't mean it's not going to come. Even out of this pandemic, people have still struggled to come out of uni and get a job. There's people that have got a degree in this and that, and have had to go work as a bin man for years, and then he finally got a job, and the company that took him said, your perseverance is working as a bin man, and there's nothing wrong with working as a bin man, but when you've worked so hard, at a certain degree to go and work in a certain field, you can imagine how it must feel to then not be able to get a job straight away. But it takes time. These things do take time, but don't, just because we're in the middle of a global pandemic, like, just try not to lose sight of what is important. And as you said, like, we've had nearly 3 months to basically do whatever. Like, even with me, like, when I launched Styling by Low, I launched that on the 24th of February, and I actually had the flu. I was in hospital with the flu that day. Now looking back, I think I actually had COVID, but they weren't rolling out tests at this point. But now looking back, I think I did have that.
And it wasn't serious.
I was actually. All they said was that, have you been to Wuhan? And obviously I hadn't, so they'd left it there. But now looking back at the symptoms and looking back at how I felt, and then when I've read some other people's other people's like testimonies and symptoms and their accounts, and they've said, like, I've honestly never felt so sick in my life. That is how I felt. Like, I thought I was going to die. And everyone probably look at this and think, oh, you're such a drama queen. Like, no, I was in hospital on a drip. I was so sick. But that's the day that I launched Styling by Low. But I kind of wasn't really persistent with it for the first couple of weeks because I had so much other stuff going on in terms of uni. And this is when, within about 3 weeks after that, I launched that. That's when the cases started to climb, and then so everything was going a bit crazy with the whole thing. But once we went into lockdown, I kind of thought, you know what, I've got all the time in the world to really, really put myself into it, throw myself into this. Why not? And ever since then, I'm not massive, I'm not big, but I've made great progress. And I feel like you just have to just make sure you don't feel disheartened because you're going to walk out of it, not have a graduation. Like, as much as it is disappointing, but your degree is not a waste of time. It will never be just a pointless thing you did. Like, make sure you just keep persevering. That's all I would say. Keep the faith.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this whole situation is because life moves and doesn't wait for anybody, right? And
it doesn't.
This has been a very rare opportunity where life has stopped for everybody. And this doesn't happen often. So I think you should take this time more on to reflect on yourself, because I feel like when you're at uni, like Josh said, in a bubble, you kind of forget who you are, what you want to be,
100%.
who you are, what you want to be. So you've had the time now to come out, sit down, reflect on yourself, and make choices in the direction you want to go. Maybe you're not going to get a job right now, but you can maybe plan towards what you want to do. Because you might have left uni with an idea of what you want to do because you're in that bubble. Now you've come out and you use this period to think about it, and you might want to do something completely different. You know what I mean? So it's
you've got all the time in the world to achieve it. So
the biggest the biggest empire you can build is yourself. And that's what I think people. I think that's what people need to remember.
But your biggest enemy of progress is yourself. At the same time. Like,
exactly.
Your own. You can be your own biggest enemy. So you always have to keep that in mind at the same time. And at the same time, like, I personally feel like this lockdown has flown by. I thought the days have gone so quickly, even though at the time I felt like it was dragging.
I don't know what day
but
is.
Now,
Yeah.
I think I lost track of the days at one point, but like I think it's flown by, but at the same time we had so much time on our hands, and you know, a lot of people can look back and thought, wow, I did this, I did that, I was really productive. But at the same time, I also want to say, if people weren't so productive, that's okay too, because I also feel like the lockdown, you know, it's tough. It's a very tough thing to cope with, being locked in your house 23 hours a day, because you're only allowed out for an hour, 7 days a week. Like, that's difficult on someone's mental health when you're so used to being out every day, being active, working, doing this, doing that, to basically just sitting at home every day and watching daytime TV, or just trying to do your uni work at home. You know, that's difficult. So when I would see people say, use this lockdown to do this and that, yeah, that's also great. But I mean, I also felt like you can't necessarily say that to make people who haven't been as productive to feel down about what they've done. People handle things in many different ways, and I feel like in terms of like this, in terms of how like I know it can affect mental health, and how I've even just seen like some friends have said like, you know, it's been really tough, and like that's fine. It's fine to just completely take time out for yourself. But in terms of students, don't necessarily feel like your degree was a waste of time, because you're gonna get there in the end. It just might take a bit longer, and in a way, be thankful you haven't been thrown in at the deep end straight away.
Yeah,
exactly. That's a good thing. You've got time to figure life out a bit. So
count your blessings.
Yeah, exactly.
Count your blessings where you can. That moves me a bit on to how has the bank balances been since lockdown?
My bank balance does not exist, bro. It has.
How's money management been in lockdown? Has it changed from what your normal lifestyle would be, or has
it's probably got worse, if anything.
What have you guys been doing?
To be honest, I'm always broke, but I'm more broke than I was, which is saying something. So, I mean, like Lois was saying, in terms of people who work part-time and have been furloughed and whatnot, I worked part-time in IT like during the year, but obviously now this has happened. Not only do I not have the time to work in IT, but we also haven't been offered shifts as well. Yeah. And then at the same time, the uni's not applying for the furlough scheme to actually pay us whilst we can't work. So like, I'm not getting any income, but then there's bills to pay. Yeah, it's a bit mad. So like, it's difficult for a lot of people, you know, like in terms of money management, especially if you're not getting any income in. And it's not like you can just go out and get a side hustle, like, and do something, you know, to get some extra income.
But there's also a lot of government, like, for instance, like universal credit is out there.
Exactly.
Job seekers allowance, and they've made the applications a lot easier for people. So if you're in a situation where you're not fine, you've got bills to pay but no money coming in,
look to
government websites.
Look to schemes. There is help there.
Yeah, there is help there, because like, I don't think it's to get that sort of help. You're kind of like, oh, well, my own benefits now. People need help. People need help from time to time. You know what I mean? Yeah. So wait, a point Lois touched on is mental health under lockdown. I think that is a very massive topic.
It is really important. Yeah.
Because mental health under lockdowns probably affected so many people. I think people that didn't realize they had mental health struggles before are probably realizing it now because of the busy lifestyles used to mask it.
Yeah.
So what's your opinions on mental health under lockdown? How do you think people have fared?
Deteriorated out of control. I mean, I know the number of suicides was up, and I know that, you know, the amount of people who have just been struggling in terms of their anxiety and the depression, especially like, I can't even imagine what it's like for people who live alone, and the only kind of contact they have with people is when they go out, when they see people that don't live with them. So the lockdown has so many. The only one positive the lockdown had is that it stopped the spread of the virus, but the negatives that it had was so detrimental to people's lives, and that's financially, that's mentally and physically. It's just insane. Like, I can't even imagine how people who suffer with severe mental health issues have coped through these 10 weeks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like everyone at one point in their life will experience some type of mental health issue, and when people say mental health, I think there's such a negative stigma attached to people think it's like, oh, like, you know, you're a schizophrenic, like you're crazy. It's not. Like, simple anxiety is a mental health condition. Like, when you feel anxious, that is a mental health issue, and it doesn't mean that you're mentally unwell or unstable. Do you know what I mean? It just, everyone needs everyone has these small things, but I think the lockdown has definitely kind of amplified that for a lot of people that generally went through life thinking they were perfectly fine. But when we went into lockdown, they realized that they just couldn't cope. And again, no GPs, but like you couldn't go into your GP, you can't pop in to see anyone to talk about it. So what are you supposed to do? Like, you're supposed to just sit at home and you know, and basically go out of your mind. It's just, it's honestly, I think this has been one of the most awful times that I've ever seen since I've been alive.
I don't think we'll see this sort of time in our lifetime ever again.
I hope not. Better not.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you tell your grandkids about.
Exactly. We couldn't even step into 2020 and it already.
Nah, dipped my toe in it, and it got munched off. This year's been dust.
Do you know what I mean? It's been something else.
Can you imagine all the New Year's resolutions and plans?
My New Year's resolutions went out on January 1st, 2020. That's how this year started and ended. Basically.
I know. I feel like this is the year that I've decided to learn to drive, and now I can't even learn to drive.
That's peak. Yeah, see what I mean? Yeah.
This is the year that I said to myself, I'm going to learn to drive. Yeah.
See what I mean?
Still no license. Still can't drive.
No, I think though, in terms of the mental health, like I think it's going to be a wake-up call for workplaces and universities to actually figure out how they can extend their mental health services beyond, because obviously if they're going to decide to go online, or all of your employees are working from home, how can you need to have something in place there to make sure that your employees are okay and that their mental health is okay, because it's very difficult when you're still trying to impose the same level of stress and deadlines and everything on somebody when the environment's changed so drastically. So like, I think companies, universities need to work on how they're going to do that for sure going forward.
There needs to be a massive reform everywhere, to be honest. Like I said, when it's our stop life. So when everything stops, you realize the faults in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, and it's shown through everything, to be honest. And our government's failures are, being, projected a bit more.
As if they weren't already. A bit.
It's a tad bit. Just coming out there a little bit more.
I don't think you want to get me started on this government.
No. We can form a whole week-long podcast on that one.
Exactly.
It's been crazy, but I think we've covered go on.
Talking of failures and problems.
Yeah.
I think we can move on to one next issue.
Go on then.
Which is the most pressing issue, I think I would describe it as the second global pandemic that we have now experienced this year.
Racism.
And the absolute horrific murder of George Floyd has basically sparked another civil rights movement, but a worldwide one this time. And I think as amazing as that is, I don't know why it's taken so long.
Yeah, I know. I was saying just the other day, it's almost as if, because this happens quite regular, right? The George Floyd situation, it happens very regular. And I feel like people see it happening, we'll talk about it for a week or so, and then we'll move on until the next one happens.
It's an ongoing battle.
It's an ongoing battle. I think there's too much of...
You're so desensitized to it now.
Yeah.
We're so used to seeing it happening that it's like, who's next? It's who's the next person that we're going to see.
You sit there and you read the news reports, you're like, oh, it's happened again. But you should never be thinking like that. You shouldn't be, oh, it's happened again.
Exactly.
And it's because we know the outcome. We know what's going to happen. We know that they're going to walk free. We know that all of that's nothing is going to change. Even back from 2000, when was Oscar Grant killed? Was it 2009 or 2011? I think it was 2009.
Yeah, 09.
It was 2009. When Oscar Grant was killed, like his killer got an involuntary manslaughter charge and did like a 9-month jail sentence.
Yeah,
of course.
The man was handcuffed to the floor and he shot him in his back.
Of course, because the racism is systematic. How do you fight against something which is ingrained in the system?
To be honest, it's a pressing issue, right? But what needs to happen now is this. So there's obviously racism in everywhere. Like, we can't just say it's in America, it's happening here as well. We just don't talk about it as much. Yeah, obviously it's worse over there.
Yeah.
The thing is, the people that are white need to use your white privilege in the right way. Yeah, having white privilege, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you got to use it in the right way. Do you get what I mean?
And I feel like, go on,
go on. Another thing I was going to say who's going first?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go first. I was going to say that I feel like people think that this Black Lives Matter movement is a criticism to all white people. It's not, and it's not saying that no one else's life matters. That's not what we're saying. But you can't scream everyone's life matters when Black lives just don't matter. Your point doesn't make sense. You're taking away validation from your own movement by screaming that. So, you know, back to your point about white people shoot hands, you can carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say is everyone has a voice, right? Everyone has their own platforms in their own ways. And I think now is the time to figure out how to use your voice properly and to educate, nurture, and bring people together, and not use it to be toxic and push people away. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have a circle of people that don't agree with you, now's the time to know, I need to cut these people out. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's
absolutely. And I feel like silence is complicity, and we're past silence now. We're past people being silent because they don't want to offend and because you don't want to tread on people's toes. I think we are so past that point. Like, we are nearly 60 years on from when the Civil Rights Amendment was put through, but yet nothing much has changed for these people in America specifically. And I even watched a show the other day on Netflix called 13, which is about the 13th Amendment. And did you know that the 13th Amendment says that even though it abolished the act of slavery, it still said that Abraham they could be slaves if they were criminals. So what they did is they arrested all the Black people that they freed and then just made them slaves again. And even now, you will know if you look into the prison system and in how it works in America, the prisoners are basically working in there for practically next to nothing. And a lot of companies use prison labor to manufacture their products. Victoria's Secret and JCPenney was one of them. And then when it exposed, they severed their ties with it because they got exposed for using prison labor to make their goods. So, you know, I think, like, you know, at first I kind of understand, because some people say just because I'm not saying anything doesn't mean I care, doesn't mean I don't care. I mean, for me, if you're my friend or you're someone who has Black friends, feeds into Black culture, listens to Black music, loves Black culture, but you don't want to speak up when Black people are being murdered, then you're just as bad. And at first I feel like I couldn't take that stance, because you shouldn't, you know, people are people, but at the same time, how can you be my friend, listen to the music made by people who look like me, but when people look like me are dying, you want to be quiet? That doesn't make sense. But then at the same time, it's a great area for me because I do respect people that are just honest. Like, there was a girl on Twitter who was exposed for basically saying that she basically cared more about white feminism than she did about Black people's lives, and how George Floyd must have done something, and how he was resisting arrest. The police officer was just doing his job. It was a group chat of girls. One of the girls apologized because she was obviously being attacked, but the other one basically just said, like, I said what I said and I don't care, like, I stand by it. And as vile as it was, I feel like you have to respect that more. Because would you want a fake apology? Would you want her fakeness to stand behind it?
The thing is, I'd rather not. Like, it's not a police officer's job to put their knee on somebody's neck.
Oh yeah,
it's not a police officer's job to stand by and watch somebody put their knee on somebody's neck. Like, the whole point in all of this is, like, the police system, just the system in America and across the globe, has such a powerful voice, like, which is literally ingrained in white supremacy, that it means Black people especially are at the bottom of the chain in terms of being heard. People of color are at the bottom of the chain in terms of being heard, which is why it's important that people need to be educated. Like, because
people need to be educated, but you can't educate people who don't want to be.
That's true as well.
And I feel like if people want to remain naive and they want to say, I don't care, I stand, like, in a way, you have to respect that honesty, because people will fake it just so they stop getting attacked. And I would rather someone oppose me openly than oppose me behind my back. That's my point. You get what I'm trying to say? I'd rather you openly say to me, I don't support your movement, I don't really care about what's happening to your people, than you being fake about it, smiling in my face, but behind closed doors you're using every racial slur under the sun, and said that you know, he did what happened to him, he deserved. Like, in a way, and you'll find a lot of people feel like that, because they feel like we're so done with the fakeness, we're so done with the pretend, because then when it really counts, where are you? Because it don't mean nothing. And that's, you have to respect those people who have just said, you know what, I stand by it, but at the same time, you know, it's like, how can you stand by that? Like, that's disgusting. But at least, you know, they haven't got a heart, they haven't got humility in them, they have a different, they look at the world in a different way. And you have to, like, I feel like at the same time people say, how can we not educate ignorant people? Some ignorant people don't want to be educated. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I agree, we can't ignore ignorance anymore. We've ignored ignorance for 60 years, but it's to a point now it can't be ignored anymore. But then there's some ignorant people who just don't want to change. They don't want to see any other point of view, because they firmly believe being racist is what they like, white supremacy is it. And I just, it's crazy.
It is what it is. Don't be part of the silence, be part of the education, be part of the voice, change the people's perceptions you can.
That's why I am so vocal.
Change the people's perceptions you can. We have to understand, we can't change everyone's perception. You can't. You just can't. So you got to start somewhere. Start your education with the people around you. If your circle's starting to get educated, they're going to educate their circle. You're going to start creating a constant flow. Do you get what I mean? So I think in this situation, obviously everyone's very angry. But the thing is, having anger and projecting the wrong way will do worse things than taking a step back, educating people properly, and trying to make changes through that way. Is what I'm saying. But again, another thing I'll say is, you know how people are disagreeing with the rioting and the looting and stuff like that? The looting stuff, some of it I don't agree with. But for me, I feel like if this sort of noise isn't being made, then who's going to be listening?
Well, this is the thing. We've gone the full span from the civil rights movement to now. We've gone from the civil rights movement to the Tottenham riots.
Yeah, exactly.
Today. And things have changed. I'm not going to sit here and say things have changed, because those people really, really put their lives on the line to get things changed. Voting rights, you know, more inclusion in the workplace. A lot has changed. Police brutality, on the other hand, has not changed.
Yeah.
Equality in the workplace still has not changed. It's changed somewhat, but it still has not changed. So what is the answer?
Talking of the workplace, when I say, I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and they said, you know, how many people can relate to people of colour having to put on a different voice when they're going for a job, effectively having to put on their white voice or their professional voice, because our voices apparently are deemed unprofessional.
It's something we're conditioned to change. Yeah.
We've all got a voice, and that's one thing. Like they said, like, think about it. You've got a professional voice, you've got a work voice, I've got one. But then, you know, he named some other people that we knew, and he's like, do you think that they've got that kind of voice? Like, think about it like that. And like, that's something that Black people in this country, that I can speak of, like, just because I'm not sure about how it is across the globe, exactly, but like, they have to adapt that into their life, because they know that if they showed up and was just themselves, it is not enough. It's not accepted. And I feel like those are the things that we have to feel. Just because you're not necessarily using the N-word to my face and telling me to go back to my country, you know, especially in Britain, it is covert racism that we experience here. It's so like covered by so many things, but you don't need to be Einstein to see it. The person clutching their bag when you walk past them in the street, the use of your white voice when you're going for a job, the fact that you know that if you're going for a corporate job or any kind of job, you know that you're probably going to be, there's only going to be a few Black people going for the job, and you know 9 times out of 10 none of you are going to get it. If one of you does get it, you're probably going to be the token Black person that's got it, because you're there. In TV shows, in reality television like Love Island, there's always the token Black girl that never ever does well. She's always one of the first people to get kicked off, because there's no one in there for her, no one in there to find her attractive, because they put people in there that don't find Black women attractive, and they're always the first women to go. They always, and like, I think even Yawande said that she just felt uncomfortable from the minute she got on there, because she knew it weren't for her. She knew that show wasn't made for her. So that's what we experience here. But then even then, like with police brutality, we still have those problems here. Like police are 4 times more likely to use force when stopping and searching a black person than they are to a white person.
Yep, of course.
Our prisons are filled with black men on minor charges, such as having a small amount of weed on them. When white rapists and murderers walk free every day. The man that spat at Benny on the train,
nothing happened,
has walked free when I've seen 2 reports of people who spat at police officers with COVID, went to jail for assault, but they closed the case within a day. So we experienced that, and I feel like when people say there's not a racism issue here anymore, when we've got a prime minister who referred to Muslim women as letterboxes, said that black children were pickaninnies, and said black people had watermelon smiles, I think it's insane to say that we don't have an issue here, because we do. You know, we've got that, and then we've got the COVID pandemic, which is also killing us 4 times faster than it's killing white people. So to say that we don't have a problem, we absolutely do. And that COVID problem is not killing us faster due to genetics. It's killing us faster due to racism, because we're not getting the same treatment that everyone else is getting. And 9 times out of 10, it's black people on the front lines in the harder jobs. And I'm not talking about like doctors and consultants. I'm talking about cleaners, porters, nurses. They're black people, and that's why they're dying quicker. Bus drivers, train workers. Most of the bus
100%.
drivers you've seen die have been black. So, you know, just because we don't have the KKK marching through our streets doesn't necessarily mean we haven't got an issue here. So
I mean,
when people are silent and say, you know, we have an absolute issue.
We have that party called the English Defence League, the EDL people. We have
who are against BNP, and
the EDL who are against blacks and Muslims. So it's everywhere. It's a worldwide problem. But
Brexit.
Yeah.
Brexit has taken us back 20, 30 years. So that's one thing that, you know, like my mum's even said, like, you know, Brexit's taken us back to the 70s in terms of the racism. Like people are just being so more openly racist, and it's just so, it's so hurtful when people try to say that there's no issue here, because how can you tell me as a black person that I don't experience racism? How can you tell me that? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So I think it's just people being naive, or because they want to ignore the fact that we have an issue. I don't know what it is, but we have an issue. It's obvious. We've got an openly racist prime minister. Like you can't. We've got a miniature Trump. So what? Like where do we move from there? When you tell me there's no racism, but we've got a prime minister who's in Trump's back pocket, we have a problem. So we have 100%. A massive problem.
Massive, 100%. I agree. But it's just that's it. We have to use our voice. We are the generation of educators, I believe. So we need to use our voice.
We have to
band together, get people.
I mean, they have heard us in America. I mean, they've arrested all 4 officers. I really hope that they are brought to justice, and I really hope that we don't get the usual verdict that we always usually get. I hope that these officers are brought to justice. I hope that I'm very glad that his degree was raised to 2nd degree from 3rd, because that was not manslaughter. He murdered him. Fair enough, it may not have been premeditated, so it cannot qualify for 1st degree, because I feel like if he does get 1st degree, he will be found not guilty, because there has to be a way to prove that he planned that murder. So it has to stay at 2nd. 2nd has to be where you didn't plan it, but from the minute you was in that situation, you still intended to harm and kill. So I feel like, you know, everyone's seen that video. Everyone and their grandmother's seen that horrific video. You've seen that he sat there with his knee on his neck for 8 minutes, and you heard George Floyd crying out for help, saying he couldn't breathe. So, and there's many videos like that, and it's just so unfortunate. And, you know, we can't forget Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. We can't forget those people. You know, these people need justice. Apparently, I heard today that Breonna Taylor's case has been reopened while she was shot in her bed 8 times while she was asleep, and her police officers were still at work after that. But they've reopened her case. Ahmaud Arbery's killers today they were in court today. So, you know, hopefully we'll see change. But then look, you've got Trump in power, and, you know, with a man that says when the looting starts, the shooting starts. It's hard.
Yeah, that's one step forward.
You just don't know where this is gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we got to stay consistent with it. Got to stay together, and got to keep it moving. Really, keep it pushing.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep it pushing, because it's when we stop is when it all goes back to like it's like another phase again. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
You just got to keep that awareness alive.
Yeah. You've got to keep the fire burning, but I do think with the looting is a really great area, because I do feel like at one side there are people who are going out looting and vandalizing and whatever, and they're just using this man's unfortunate murder to steal. However, on the other hand, it's making noise. You don't listen to us when we plead for help, when we say we can't breathe. But you will hear us when we hit your pocket, and I think that's what I understand of it. And I think, as I went on a protest myself yesterday, I marched from Hyde Park all the way to Parliament Square, and there was no looting. It was really peaceful. There was no trouble from what I saw. But in terms of like what's going on in America, from the clips I've seen, it's all been white people doing all the looting. It hasn't even been black people doing all the looting. I've seen black people smashing windows because they're angry, but I haven't seen no black people looting. It's been white people. I saw a clip of a white woman in a shop, and she was carrying loads of clothes, and the reporter was like, "Oh, I can only hope she works there. I've worked in retail since I was 16. I do not need to smash through the shop window to go and pick up stuff because I work there."
Yeah.
So you don't take clothes home after a shift. I can promise you that, unless you pay for them.
Exactly.
And you wouldn't do that when the shop's been closed for 10 weeks because of a pandemic, and then the windows are smashed. You thought, "Oh, let me go pick up them clothes that I'm going to pay for." She didn't work there. But if that was a black woman, it would be a different narrative.
Would have been arrested.
Exactly. And I even saw another clip of people running out of the Van store. I think it was in Beverly Hills. Not one of them was black. The police were just walking up to them like it was nothing. One protester ran past, one looter ran past him with clothes in her hand. He just pulled the clothes out of her hand and let her run off. So all the looters I've seen, not one of them has been black, because that's not what they're there for. So I feel like the looting, it's a two-sided thing, because there's the one side that there are people who are not black and using it, but then the looters and the people that are doing it, they could be saying, this is the only time you hear us is when we cause this much damage and destruction.
Exactly.
It's difficult. It's a really difficult discussion with the looting.
Yeah, it's just everyone stay woke and stay together, really. That's what I'd say. Literally. But I think this has been a very powerful episode. We've spoken about a variety of topics, from COVID to what's the second pandemic, as Lois said, in the world. So I think it's been fantastic. Anyway, anything else you guys want to
add? Please do your research in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. Please don't follow fashion and just post because everyone else is. Please research what you're posting. Please don't just post a picture and go about your day. Sign petitions, donate, march, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But, educate yourselves. I feel like I've always been the kind of person, I'm happy to always give people an insight, but it becomes exhausting when it turns into an argument because you don't agree with what you asked me for originally. So don't ask me then. So I feel like it's at a point now black people are tired of educating. So it's go and educate yourselves. There's enough resources for you to do that. Yeah. So please educate yourselves. Please stand behind what's right, and don't let any of this go unheard anymore because it's gone on for too long.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I couldn't have been able to put that any better. But thank you so much for jumping on the episode with us today. Please everyone do check out. Everyone do check out Ascent magazine. Also check out Styling by Lo if you need any help. There's plenty of people out there. Links. We are the official partners. We're the official partners, so all the links will be in the description, and I'm sure you'll see more of Lois around here. Thank you so much.
Hopefully we can get a proper podcast filmed when we're all back together again.
100%.
A proper one again.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye.